So our next speaker is from the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, and he assures me his name is not transposed. Carter Christopher. I'll give you Carter's bio. It's not even, oh, come on. So I'll start off on the second sentence because it's not showing up on my phone correctly. Dr. Christopher leads the engagement across the DoD, IC, and other federal partners to establish and implement the National Geospatial Agency's roadmap for common cloud-native geospatial services. Dr. Christopher's career spans both the federal and private sector, and his experience includes airborne imagery and LiDAR, GIS implementation, spatial analytics and modeling, and geospatial training and education. His PhD in geoinformation science is from George Mason University, where his research focus was geospatial modeling and economic and demographic factors of human migration. All right. And Chris is talking to us today about leveraging the power of open source to deliver geospatial services and solutions for the defense intel community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. So I'm going to talk more strategic stuff than Dan talked about. I work for NGA, and so for those of you that don't know what NGA is, we kind of sit in between the intelligence agencies in the federal government, so all the spooky spy agencies, and the DoD, all the guys that we send off to war. And so we build data, we analyze data, we build maps for all of those folks. We support Homeland Security. When we do mapping over the U.S., it's in support in partnership with USGS or DHS or FEMA for emergency response. So we do have a little bit of a domestic mission, but primarily international. Not going to really talk about our mission so much as something I think is probably more relevant to you guys, which is migration to the cloud and adoption of open source. We, as Geospatial Intelligence Agency, really, we're just a big mapping agency. We use a ton of Esri, right? We have those 3 versions and a couple more. And Esri's great where it's great, but when you have a lot of users, right, you look for ways you can improve your cost savings and give the right solution to the right type of user. And at the same time, we've kind of got to modernize how we do IT in the federal government. And so the cloud is a part of that. Open source is a part of that. DevOps and how we develop software and deliver solutions is all a part of that. So I'm going to talk all about that. Go pretty quickly so I don't bore you too much with slides. So our director, Robert Cardillo, he says we got to work in the open. We got to not be a spooky spy agency because geospatial is done by everybody. We need to take advantage of what's going on in the commercial world, take advantage of what's going on in academia and the rest of the nation, and not pretend like the geospatial mission that we work with is different than anybody else's. Yeah, maybe I'll use this. Pardon me for a second. All right, can you guys hear me now? Still? Good. So we're doing that, right? We're doing more in the open. I'm here at a conference in North Carolina talking to you guys. We do a lot of conferences. We have data on the World Wide Web, internet, right? So we do a lot of sharing, and we're doing more. From a GeoInt services perspective, that's the effort that I'm with. I basically work the mission side of GeoInt services. So I work with all of our customers and say, hey, when we deliver stuff to the cloud, what does it need to look like for you? What are the things that you need from NGA to accomplish your mission? And so basically, I help drive our vision and mission to deliver tangible results. We've got to get data to all those people doing analysis and wanting to know what the bad guys are doing, whether they're inside the DC Beltway or whether they're in Afghanistan or Iraq or somewhere else overseas. And so really it's about finding, getting, and using and contributing geospatial data. We got to get data out as services. We got to allow people to get content flip it and ship it, and we got to allow people that are in the field that are building new data to bring it back in. And I'm sure it's the same way, right? You guys have people across the counties, across the states doing data collection, right? Getting that back in schemas that integrate through technology solutions that don't require you bringing CDs back into the office or even thumb drives, right? That we can do this over the internet is where we're trying to do. Where we're trying to go with this. So use the cloud, modernize IT, deliver geospatial data, deliver technology through the browser and not through thick client applications. Use DevOps so that we can automate security protocols, so that we can automate as much as possible how we deliver software to an end user. It's all part of the package. So it's a big effort, but we're having really great results. From a user perspective, we talked about find, get, use, and share or contribute. We've got data in the federal government. We make data all over the place, and we have lots of different data owners. And those data owners in the past have been given the task of controlling their own search and discovery interfaces, right? And so if I want data if I want this type of data, I go over to this guy. If I want that type of data, I go over here, over here, over here, over here. And so I've got data all over the place, and I've got lots of different places to go discover that. We need to pull that. We're pulling that together into a single search, right? So it doesn't. I don't have to be a detective to figure out where I need to go get data. And we don't have Google in the federal government, so it's really hard to just type a single search in and even find where these portals are. So we're working and tackling the effort to find all these data repositories and pull them into a single search appliance or a single search engine. We're also working with all the data providers to expand service offerings. We've been really good at NGA in pushing out map services, Esri map services, WMS, OGC services. Not so good about giving data access to attributes, raw information, either raw access to the raw data or feature services, coverage services, image services. You can actually do something with the pixels or the attributes there. And so expanding the service offering and then working with those services to get them performant, right? You send a feature service or a coverage service across the wire. It's not easy to do a whole lot of crunching on that data, and so we've got to scale those services so that they support that. We're delivering tools, common tools for users, so things like your Python script, right? Making those services, delivering those out to users so that when someone makes an analytic, someone makes a tool that's applicable to everybody, everybody else can get that and use it, and we don't have to spend dollars to build the same thing over and over and over again. And then I talked about being able to share data and really anything, data or capabilities, scripts, models that folks build. We want folks to bring that all back together into a larger body of knowledge so that it's one side of the community can benefit from the other side of the community. I mean, at the end of the day, we're trying to help the Marine Corps talk to the Army, right? So, at least on the geospatial side. And so we're trying something a little bit different on the IT side. In the past, most at least in my experience, because I come from the mission side, from my perspective, on the mission side, when I say mission, I mean kind of users, right? Geospatial analysts, GIS users. We look at the IT department and say, you're measuring success because you've delivered something, not because it actually works for me or it's valuable to me. And so we're turning that around, right? We don't care how much we deliver from an IT perspective or from a deliverable perspective. We care whether it actually meets the need of the users that we're delivering stuff to. And so I don't need to read the slide to you, but we consider our users not just analysts, not just field operators, but also data managers, developers, IT managers, and each of those has different needs from data, from applications, from kind of core IT service as a service offerings that we're bringing to the table. So if you're in the federal government and you have like a CAT card or PKIs, you can get to our website. This is our website. It looks nice and flashy and fancy. That's who we are. And I'm gonna. So this is this, and I'm going to transition to open source. This is our websites. We offer a bunch of user-facing tools and a bunch of developer tools. I did the count yesterday. Right now we're at 24 developer DevOps tools, and of the 24 developer and kind of user-facing tools, of those 24, 21 are open source. And so we're doing a heavy investment in open source. When I say open source, they are either we're contributing back to open source, or we're adopting an open source technology and bringing it in with little change in the baseline. And so let's transition to talk about open source a little bit. So in delivering what we're attempting to deliver for the DoD and the intelligence community, one of the things that we need to make sure we do is keep pace with the commercial world, because we have a lot of young folks coming to work for us and young folks going to work for other agencies. And I mean, even and I'm not that old, but even older folks, right? We all use geospatial data in our lives, right? We all have Waze and Google Maps, and it's really easy to get geospatial data when you're not in the federal government, when you're just in your daily life. And so when I come to work, where I work, I can't bring my cell phone into the office, right? So so I'm stuck with the federal systems that we have, and you know, it's all a part of keeping the best and the brightest talent, and keeping the best and the brightest talent is part of part of that is delivering technology solutions that meet the expectations that they have when they go home. And so we're embracing agile development efforts, and I mentioned DevOps before, but in order for us to deliver solutions at pace and bring in, whether we're developing something on our own or we're bringing in commercial solutions or existing open source solutions, that has to be fast. If any of you guys ever work with the federal government or you're part of the federal government, you know that when we do an acquisition, it takes forever, right? When we let a contract, it takes a long, long time. And so building novel methods for acquisition for contracts to allow us to get software in much more quickly is part of this. And also how when you bring stuff into a secure government network, even on the unclassified side, security to do that takes a really, really long time. And in many cases, it's very manual. And manual in the sense that it's people have to sign off on things, literally sign off on things. And so we're trying to automate a lot of that to allow us to really get new releases of software, whether it's the new Esri release or a new build that we make, delivered into the hands of users that much more quickly. And OGC is center of this because we want that data to be applicable across the board and accessible across the board. And we believe that OGC is a great way to make that happen, so that we're not just locked into using Esri when we don't need to be. So part of this is doing more with less. So open source helps us do that, but open source, while it is in many cases free, it's free like a puppy, right? It's free like a baby. So there's a lot of work there, and how we in the federal government have how we like to do business in the past is we like to understand who we're doing business with. We don't just go buy software from anybody, right? And so, but when you talk about open source, anybody can go and fork a repo, do an edit, contribute it back in, right? And so keeping track of who's doing what and understanding what those changes do is something that we in the federal side have to just mature and educate ourselves. And as we adopt that model, can do so in a way that allows us to still keep pace with things on the security side and on just the delivery side. And you know, if you watch Silicon Valley on HBO, or you're just kind of familiar with the startup and innovation culture, right? They talk about failing fast and move on to the next thing. Federal government doesn't like to fail fast. They don't like to fail at all, because if I let a contract and that vendor is building me something and we tell them to fail fast, then they're in contract default, right? So we don't like to fail fast. There's a lot of issues with just generally that word and the connotations there. But from a development perspective, that's kind of the mindset, right? Just MVPs, try it. If it doesn't work, move to the next thing and just keep rolling. Don't take 6 to 12 months on engineering requirements before you even start building something, right? So the federal government is really fully on board with open source software. It's there's official memoranda that support that, and so pushing that down into culture is the challenge, and just changing how we do business, and we're working through that. I think you guys kind of get what FOSS is and open source software. It's free, it's open source, anyone can edit it, anyone can use it. There are licenses associated with open source software, and so we'll talk about that in a second. But you know, again, we're using it, so it's already there. We're just getting better. Lawyers are a part of this because, like I said, there are licenses, and how and when you use open source software has to fall under those licenses. And it takes a special kind of lawyer that understands that, right? Lawyers generally, to have a lawyer that is willing to take a risk and that understands technology and is adaptable and flexible in how they kind of view policy and view the legal language of licenses is a great find. And if you find someone like that, then latch onto them and make them part of your team immediately. And we've been lucky to find a couple of those folks at our agency. I mean, it's really nice when you find someone that helps you find a way to yes, rather than it helps you immediately sets up a no, and then you got to figure out how to get through the no. So finding a way to yes is really where we want to be. So using open source is important for us because we think it helps us do more with less, be more agile, be more flexible. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're supporting open source, and so that's another shift that we're trying to do on our side, because we believe that if we can contribute back into the open source community, we help build the community up, right? And the community can at the same time help us do more, and we build a stronger relationship that way. And not all the cases, but in many cases, we're actually contributing source code back to GitHub. We have our own GitHub account at our agency, but we work with partners and developers that help us augment existing baselines, whether it's OpenGeo Suite or other software baselines on the open source side that are valuable to us. We partner with open source software foundations that that keep us in the mix and keep us understanding what the trajectory is there. And I talked about our GitHub account, so you can actually go there and see some of these tools that we've published out there. Hootenanny completion engine, so we can put it's based on the OpenStreetMap schema, but you can bring in a ton of data and conflate it pretty easily. Mr. Geo, GeoWave, Mage is a mobile application, GeoPackage, libraries for Android and iOS. So we're putting a lot out there. And again, we're also working with a lot more than that. Then I've talked about all this, so I'll skip it for the sake of time. But like I said, there's challenges with open source. It is not free, despite the fact that it is free. There's a lot of work, and we found that when working with open source, it's really key to have developers embedded with your users, right? Have developers that are kind of free range and that can help support the integration of open source tools. There's a lot of configuration that has to happen. Not that isn't the case with commercial software, but generally commercial software comes pretty well packaged up, and you can run an executable and get something loaded and on a machine pretty easily. Not always the case with open source software. And so we've had success where we've had developers sitting with our analysts or with the users of the software that are able to help them configure those implementations and get them operational much more quickly. And so working with leadership on our IT side is another big area, a big challenge for us, because It's just knowledge and understanding of how open source works, and that there is value, and that it isn't just kids making edits to software and it's not mature, right? These are mature implementations of software that just because they're not considered part of a commercial software solution doesn't mean that they're not mature and scalable and commercial ready. And I mean, examples of that those senior executives on the IT side get, right, are Apache, right? They understand that, and Linux, right? Things that are mature on the core IT server side. When we get into software, application, user-facing things, there's more education that has to happen there. From a GIS perspective, you know, we're doing a lot with open source GIS, and we're moving into the plateau of productivity, as they say. But we have GIS all throughout our agency, and I mean, GIS is everywhere in the federal government, and so and for the most part, right, that's commercial GIS. It's Esri solutions, and so different pieces of the open source stack are coming in at different places at different times. But we do believe in a hybrid approach. We do believe that we can the right tool for the right job, and understanding the right tool for the right job takes the right people, right? And it's easy to just go and buy. Somebody says, I need GIS. It's easy to just go buy the commercial solution on the shelf that says GIS, without necessarily understanding and doing assessment of what are you trying to do. What is the slate of solutions out there? Do I need Oracle? Can I use PostGIS, Postgres, right? Should I use Arc Server, Arc SDE? And figuring out, based on the use case and kind of the goals of the project, what the right solution is, rather than just, I'm just going to grab the box and go. And we've got a lot of users at NGA. We got a lot of users across the federal government, and I think, you know, we're all kind of getting spoiled by the availability and ease of use of geospatial data just on our phones, right? And so you got a lot of folks that want to use it, but do not want a lot of complexity in what they're using. Basic web maps, basic just discoverability. You know, let me geocode. Let me just search for a place and go find and explore. And so I don't need an expensive desktop solution for that. I don't have a lot, you know, relatively speaking, I don't have a lot of users that need that complex, highly complex, massive toolbox GIS suite. And so bringing in a broader range of solutions for us, whether it's open source or even custom builds of just, you know, OpenStreetMap with a light viewer, is really helping us tackle our range of users much more easily. We talked about DevOps, right? And as we go to the cloud, I mentioned we've got data all over the place, and that's not a bad thing because it's a lot of good data, but we want to bring all that together into a single environment that allows it to commingle, right? And so my data can work with other data over the same area of the world. Hybrid architecture, it's not just on the application side, it's the database tier, it's at the server tier. We're not trying to box anybody out, but like I said, right tool for the right job. And when I need Arc, I want to be able to use Arc. When I don't need Arc, I want to be able to use other things that allow me to deliver the right solution to the right user. We've done a lot of work on database as a service within our technology group, within the GWINT services group, so that when a user comes in, they want to provision a database to support, right, some structured data storage, that they can do that. So that's been one of the low-hanging fruit for us using Postgres and PostGIS and platform as a service offerings. We can spin up databases pretty quickly. The desktop GIS tier is also a relatively easy one to tackle because I mean, I can go and install QGIS on a desktop relatively easily, or virtualize that for folks. It's in between that it gets muddy, and it gets difficult because that's where a lot of the bindings are, right, between data and application application servers and the user interfaces. That middle tier is kind of what holds it together. And so the strategic integration of open source there is what we're working through right now. So this is where I leave you, right? Open source is great for us. It's helping us do more with less. Like I said, it's helping us move faster. It's helping us be more on the NGA side, on the kind of spooky government side, be more a member of the community, because we can partner with folks that are actually doing that open source development, and whether we're contributing dollars, we're contributing needs, or we're just there for the conversation. It's helping us do more in the open, as our director has asked us to do. But we've got a lot of room to grow on our side, both just on knowledge and education. But we're not where we want to be on the implementation side. So there's a lot of room there. But that's really all I had. Hopefully, you guys are going through some of the same challenges, or at least understand what we're trying to do. And happy to learn from you guys if you're finding solutions, but also happy to share things that we've found. So, any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned that you're supplementing GitHub site for individual projects. Are you also contributing to projects with the standard methods through the like you had someone working on drafts? They sign up the draft list, contributing to the draft list.
Yeah. So we don't have our own internal developers do that, just because of just legal issues, right? But we partner with some commercial provider, kind of enterprise support providers of open source work. So as we want to use, as we need something added to the QGIS baseline, right? They help us do that to meet our needs as it comes in. Yeah.
There's this theory out there that you guys have these great satellites to get 1 foot or smaller pixel resolution photography for places like North Carolina. If that's the case, if you guys have satellites that can get you real high resolution imagery, is there any reason you can't share that with local governments, places like North Carolina?
So we have our agency manages the federal contract with Digital Globe, and so unfortunately, that federal contract for Digital Globe is for federal agencies only, and that's a thing, because Digital Globe wants to resell to state and local governments as well, right? So that's part of the reason we're not allowed to share. There are instances where we can share that data if it's an emergency, if there's like a flood or a hurricane or something where we can. The standard, I think what WorldView 3 is 30 centimeter, is that right? Yeah. So, yes, same resolution that they offer for the rest of the world.
You were talking earlier about what we do for our state partners.
Yeah.
Seems like it's something.
What are the criteria for releasing in emergency situations?
For us, it is because we have an international mission. Our mission is primarily international. For us to do data sharing domestically, we have to have a domestic sponsor, and there has to be a significant event, national security event, and so something like a natural disaster or some other situation where one of our partners, whether it's Coast Guard or FEMA or DHS or some other domestic agency, would need and request the support of NGA. Yeah.
You were mentioning the trials of getting the new releases. Being able to physically get a copy of the code will help you as far as getting to improve teams or whatever.
Definitely. So we have to scan everything, and when it's open source, we got to scan all that open source code and understand who contributed what, and we scan it from a functionality perspective, but also from a security perspective.
Yes, rather than give you the code.
Well, I mean, they don't give us all the raw source code, but once usually with the commercial pieces, the small incremental versions are much easier to get in than the major overhauls and stuff. But we still have an ability to scan the Esri source code as well. All right, thank you guys very much.